We don't want to do audio yet.
Oh.
Good morning, everyone. This is about the 60-second warning here. We'll let a few more people get on and then we'll get this thing rolling.
Commissioner Supez, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, perfect. Doing a mic check here in the room. Thank you.
No problem. All right, it is 9 o'clock. We have a quasi full agenda here today, so we'll get this thing rolling. So as usual, if you will start by joining me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, very good. So, we're going to go through the process here a little bit. Just kind of wanted to remind everybody here. This is the process we go through every year to discuss the new bills that are going to try to be introduced by CCI and adopted by CCI as our legislative priorities. This is the first stop on the train. This is our chance for counties to present their ideas. This is kind of the rough draft version. There will be opportunities after today. They will happen at the district meetings where they will also be discussed. And then there will be a steering committee meeting set on Friday, September 20th for technically a third discussion, followed by the Legislative Committee and membership meeting on October 4th, where they will be voted on as priorities. So a couple things to keep in mind here is, we've had a lot of these come up in the past that we have been able to work through without actually taking them to the legislature, that other counties have heard the issues and they've been able to find solutions that didn't require the legislature. So that's one of the great things about our process is we can sometimes solve this without having to make it an actual bill. Secondly, we have had a lot of times where we've been able to clean up language in a bill or add something to a bill that makes it, more palpable for the membership as a whole. So these meetings are very informal, but they've been very profitable or beneficial, I should say, to the membership in the past. The only other thing that I'd like everybody to remember that if they forgot that this is an election year. So there are going to be a lot of new faces in the legislature come January. And we need to keep that in mind as we move forward with some of these bills, because we don't know where it's necessarily going to go. So with that, I am going to turn this over to Kelly. And we will get this thing rolling. I know we've got this thing set for a 9 a.m. to a 4 p.m. If it takes us more than 2 to 2.5 hours, I will be surprised. So I've had a few commissioners contact me and wondering what's going to take so long. And I told them we just reserve it just in case. But normally this meeting doesn't take that long. So Kelly, I will hand it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. And that's a great overview. Really what you see here on your slide or on your screens now is really a walkthrough of what we're going to do today. And as Commissioner Soup has mentioned, this is really your first opportunity to share your proposal, your initial idea, get some feedback, and hopefully have a real robust discussion on this. I like to say it's important that as a team, we break things in the shop so that we can kind of figure out how to fix them and be better equipped to advocate on behalf of CCI for these various proposals. So we're not going to vote on anything today. The proponents, assuming that you are here, we will ask you to sort of, we'll call it pitch your idea and field questions from your colleagues. So what we are really looking at is our legislative priorities and principles. So what you see on the screen here is our policy statement. I'm not going to read this to you. I'm assuming you've all seen this several times, but a few things we want to point out is, we're always looking to build an effective and appropriate coalition that will really bolster our likelihood of success. We want to always be conscious of the fiscal realities that we are dealing with, both on a state level, considering the state budget, and then, of course, considering your own county budget realities when we think about and we bring forward our proposals. It's very important to think about, would you be willing to stand up in front of everyone and talk about and advocate on behalf of this? And so I think those are some of the framing to move into this discussion. Next slide, please. So here is our draft for you to also bear in mind of what the county nexus is. So we've talked about this a lot, and we want to bring forward ideas and proposals that really do have a county nexus. So that's something that is going to directly create a mandate or an authority that you all will be responsible to deliver. Some of these would be coupled with a fiscal impact. So really thinking about whether or not your idea does kind of meet those baseline criteria will be important in this discussion. Next slide, please. And then finally, we want to I want to just make sure that we go into this with some mindfulness of our political environment. Where we will be walking in January is going to look different from where we sit here today. So we are having an election year. We will have a dozen, give or take, new legislators. We will be coming off of a presidential election. And the property tax debate, as much as maybe we would like for this to be over, it is not over. So there will be ballot fallout discussions. The local government narrative that we all have just piles of money still exists in the Capitol. And so I really just wanted to take a minute to share this information so that we can just sort of be grounded in the reality that we will be walking into in January. So also important to remember that right now, all we're really talking about are ideas. And this is a great framing, I think, because what we want to do is we want to get your idea to turn into a proposal that can turn into a bill that can go all the way through Capitol Hill. Isn't that fun? So just as a reminder, these are ideas. There's no bad ideas. And it's really important that we have robust discussion and can really flesh these ideas out. That, again, is really going to equip your staff with all of the tools that they will need to be as effective as we can. Next slide. So here are our expectations for those of you bringing things forward. I love Jerry Maguire, and so I just wanted to have that sort of laid out too, like help us help you. And so in order to do that, you'll see the things that are kind of identified here. So we're here today to pitch concepts. We want to be able to have a discussion of how we will handle who we believe to be opponents. We don't necessarily go into this with the idea that we're going to change everyone's mind. So if we're not able to change their mind, what is going to be our strategy to neutralize some of that opposition? And as Commissioner Soup has mentioned, are there solutions or alternatives that are outside of the legislative process that we can work on to build compromise and bring forward a solution that doesn't have to go through the legislative process? We will lean on you, of course, for grassroots work, both in your communities as well as in the big room, as well as with your state elected officials. We'll ask you to speak with legislators on both sides of the aisle. We'll ask you to attend meetings, to testify, and we will look to you and to your staffs to provide technical expertise. And then hopefully we're all celebrating with a signature with the governor. Finally, what I've got for you here is sort of our next steps. Don outlined this really well as we will be here today. We'll continue to discuss these proposals at the district meetings. You should have all of those on your calendar. And these are opportunities for you all to iterate on these ideas that we're talking about, make them better, build out some arguments, take in some feedback, and then we'll continue to discuss. Then we'll have steering committee, we'll discuss some more. And then by October, our October date, it's expected that you all will have a really good handle on these proposals and be ready to vote at our membership meeting, where we will bring forward our slate of legislative priorities. Okay, so a couple of general announcements here. I'm going to just trick you a little bit and go opposite of what's written on here. So I wanted to point out that we will be having a CBMS briefing with our state partners later this month, next week. I know that this has been a very hot issue, and so I really hope that you all will make some time to attend this on the 23rd from 3 to 4. We will put this in your calendar so that you've got this. I've had a few meetings with state cabinet officials in this space and think this will be a really important discussion. So if CBMS is something that is on your mind, please make an opportunity for you to attend this meeting. We'll have follow-up discussions, so it won't be your only opportunity. And then Commissioner Rowland from Mesa County has brought forward or looked around a county salary bill. We've had a few conversations around this. I believe Dolores County is in this conversation as well. Commissioner Rowland, is there anything that you would like to add on this before we move forward? Okay, we will move forward. And if there's an opportunity, Commissioner Rowland, where you want to chime in, please just let me know and we'll accommodate, of course. So moving right into our agenda, we will look at agriculture, wildlife, and rural affairs. Larimer County has brought forward treatment of agricultural land in urban renewal authorities. Do we have a commissioner from Larimer County available to give your pitch?
Yeah, this is Kristen Stevens and I'm available. Do I just jump right in?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so I'll just tell you a little bit about this issue. So currently, due to a statutory loophole, agricultural land can be moved from an existing tax increment financing district or urban renewal authority into a newly created one. And that restarts the clock, the tax increment finance clock. So according to the original sponsors, that would be outside the stated intent of HB 10-1107, which maybe folks remember that was the way to kind of get a little urban renewal authorities a little tighter and exclude agricultural lands. So we feel that a legislative fix is necessary to close this loophole. We made efforts to do so in 2023 with SB 23-173, which passed both chambers and then was vetoed by Governor Polis. The veto letter stated that he thought it was due to was intended to affect one developer, and so that's why he vetoed that. And so that same developer has now gone through the URA process, so this couldn't be considered at this point just directed at one developer, but the problem still exists. And so we feel like a legislative fix is necessary. We don't believe that agricultural lands should be in urban renewal authorities, except for the very narrowly defined things in that legislation from 2010. And we don't feel like we should be able to restart the clock on a tax increment financing. We know that these urban renewal authorities take money, property tax dollars away from not only us at the county, but also special districts and school districts. And so, yeah, that's kind of the issue that we're trying to address, especially in a time where we're really concerned about our budget, thinking about urban renewal authorities being extended beyond their 25-year life it can be really disturbing. And also the idea that agricultural land is blighted. It really shouldn't be in urban renewal authorities at all. And so that's kind of where we're coming from, and I'm happy to answer any questions that folks might have about this one.
Thanks, Commissioner Stevens. Any questions? All right. Seeing none, let's move on to our next. Can we advance slides? Okay, we are moving into general government. I referenced this earlier with Dolores County and salary schedules. Do we have a commissioner available from Dolores County?
Yes, Floyd Cook and Steve Garcher are both here.
Wonderful. Floor is yours.
You know, this is so crazy for the smaller counties that have very little revenues. And I don't understand why Denver, Aurora, Lakewood Consumer Price Index sets our wages for elected officials. Ours will go up 10,600 and what? $646 this coming year. And when you have a budget don't support that, then we got to start cutting employees, cutting things that we do. So there's probably counties out there that have dealt with this and didn't have to go legislative, and we would take any recommendations that anybody has to offer. We want to drop a tier from 5C to 5D, but that doesn't change what we're going to have for the two electeds that's coming in this year. We'd also like to have the ability that, if this index stays the same and it increases like it did the last time, that we would have the flexibility to not go with the highest amount that they're requiring or telling us we got to pay. Our revenues have dropped about 50% due to oil and gas. And we're not a rich county, so we need all the help we can get. And every one of our elected officials is on board with this. They know, the county can't sustain those wages. So, any kind of input from anybody would sure be appreciated.
And I'd just like to chime in. This is in reference to House Bill 20-1029. And since Dolores County was created in 1882, we have been heavily reliant on extraction of natural resources. And as everybody on this call knows, Colorado has become not so happy to those type industries. And it is really hurting us for elected officials to be drawing a wage of $64,000 a year when the average annual income in Dolores County is 38. We cannot sustain this in our budget.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Weaver, I see you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Kelly. I guess to Dolores County, I forgot both of your guys' names already, but Yuma County's always been in the same boat. And what we've done is the commissioners and all the elected officials got together here. Maybe, I think it's been about 9 years ago, and we all decided and turned it into I think it was a resolution that we did drop a tier. And when you do drop a tier, even when new elected officials come in, they're still under that dropped tier. And we knew that. I knew that coming into here. And the other thing that we also did is you don't have to go by those tiers. From what I understand, those tiers are just suggestions that this is where you need to be, because we were able to drop the tier. And then we also agreed, all the elected officials in Yuma County, we're going to give back 15% of our own wage. And we've done that. We've been very successful with it. As commissioners in Yuma County, you are not going to become wealthy. We've tried to give all of that back from the elected officials back to our own employees and back to the taxpayers. But it's worked really well. So, and we can get you in touch with anybody, but it looks like there's some more people that want to comment on this.
Thank you for that, Tim. We'll probably be getting a hold of you. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks very much. Commissioner Corrigan.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I totally appreciate the challenges that Dolores County has and other smaller counties. And I think I could find a way to support a measure that targeted those counties that are financially struggling and have budget challenges. The fear of this, as I think a lot of us understand, is that in other counties, you could quickly have a race to the bottom, and you could turn this into a political football where the commissioner that promises to work for free or for some very low level and inflicts that upon the other commissioners, you end up with a situation where the only people that can afford to serve are wealthier, retired individuals. So if we go down this path, I just want to caution us to be really careful about the unintended consequences. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lasky.
I just wanted to share that Alamosa County also, a number of years ago, we selected to go down a category for us because of budget. And what that does, this is an extreme increase this next year coming up, it seems to me. But by going down that to the lower tier, it keeps it a little more within our budget, but it also doesn't make us have to do a decision every single time for a slight increase. Also, just a comment. Thank you.
But that increase happens every odd year, correct? Every 2 years, this increase comes about.
Yes, with every new election. Yes.
Right.
Commissioner Paget.
Yeah, good morning. It's another low bandwidth day in Uray County, so I'm going to leave my video off if that's okay. Just to put a kind of a fine point on what Commissioner Corrigan just shared, that is a campaign issue that's active in Uray County in a commissioner race right now. Is one of the candidates has said as part of their platform that they want to give back to the county 25% of the salary if elected. And then they want to earmark what they give back to the nonprofit organization of their choice. And they happen to be the president of a board of a nonprofit. And that political pressure is real, and just wanted to share that. But at the same time, it is difficult because we have professional staff, we have some elected officials, assessor, treasurer, sheriff, clerk, and in the mountain resort areas, which I can speak to, it's been really hard to attract and retain good elected officials when they are paid much less than their deputies. And that was the situation in Uray County during the recession. And so now we finally are perhaps at a place where it's a little more equitable between the elected officials and their top staff for those departments. But I completely hear what Dolores County is saying. And I do recall San Juan County had a situation where I think those commissioners were not taking the full salary that they would have otherwise got, because they were, sounds like maybe in a similar situation to Dolores, and that was their choice. So that might be worth finding Fetch or former Commissioner Pete McKay to hear how they did that.
Thank you very much. I think I heard several maybe alternatives to a legislative approach. So Dolores County, if it's okay with you all, I will do some investigation on some of these and follow back up with you as we kind of move through this process. Does that sound okay?
You bet.
Thank you. Thanks, Lynn.
Thanks very much. Any other questions for Dolores County? Okay, let's move on. Let's advance our slide. I think our next one here comes from El Paso County, looking at eliminating the fee on paper carryout bags. Do we have a representative from El Paso County on the line?
I'm here.
Hi, Commissioner. Please go ahead.
Hi, good morning, everybody. As you all know, we have had the bag fee that started on, plastic bags before those were completely banned in the state of Colorado and has continued on paper bags. After investigating this with several other counties and municipalities, what we realized is A, our citizens really dislike this fee. B, many of our municipalities and counties are not enforcing this fee because the cost and staff time to take care of this fee is really not worth what is coming in. And so in El Paso County, we have money sitting in a bank account, not a lot of money, but money that has been sent in from organizations. Again, just because they're trying to do the right thing. And we really have nothing to do with that money because it's not enough to really do anything meaningful. And yet, businesses are sending it in because again, they're trying to be compliant. So because of, the fact that we all know that, residents are struggling with all kinds of additional fees, taxes, inflation. And it's not a big one, but it's something that, again, is also affecting us as a county because it's just putting in extra work and we're just really not sure what we're ever going to do with this money. It seems kind of silly. So our proposal is simply just to eliminate that fee so that we don't have to collect it anymore and that residents don't have to pay it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any questions? Commissioner Neese. You're on mute.
Thank you. Wanted to comment on this in support. I'm on the Producer Responsibility Advisory Board, where we've been discussing fees for producers that produce single-use products that the consumers touch. And while it's not exactly in line with the bag fees, the concept of our circular economy has been front and center. And I think in the past, there was a campaign to say, stop using paper bags to save the trees and the forests. But at this time, we now have a pretty robust ability to recycle paper pulp. And I believe those carryout bags are made from mostly recycled material. And I think it is appropriate to shift our thinking on this, both from just the fee side and the inflation side, but also from the sustainability side, that we now have a pretty robust paper recycling system that these bags are made out of. So those harms that we're trying to avoid, I think can be avoided, and paper bags are a better alternative, absolutely, than plastic bags.
Thank you. I have a question on this one. Does anybody know or recall what the original intent of the fees were? Like what the fees were supposed to go to? I'm just kind of thinking as we would talk about this, that people would say, well, you're supposed to do X. Does anyone have any ideas on that?
It was supposed to be, I think, for recycling programs. We already have recycling in El Paso County, and I think the total amount that we've collected, and obviously being the largest county here, I'm going to guess that, ours are probably bigger than most, but I think we have about $30,000 that we've collected. And that's really not enough to start some sort of new program. And we already have those programs.
Thank you. That's helpful. Commissioner Thomas.
I'll just add that we used some of our money last year, just before the fair, to buy a bunch of those canvas bags that people can bring into the grocery store and use. And we tried to pass them out at the fair, and we've got boxes of them here now. But that's what we spent some of that money on.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown.
Good morning. I wonder if there's any research on how effective those prices are or those fees are. And because I think part of it is really trying to change behavior so that people who are resistant to paying the fee will bring their own bags. And I wonder if there's any data available on how effective the fees are in that regard, because I would be concerned that people would not change their habits if they don't have to pay that fee.
Thank you. Commissioner Stoltzman.
Thank you. Yeah, just a couple things. There is a lot of research on the effectiveness of bag fees, and you have to set it high enough that it affects change. And so, there's a lot of study that's gone into that, and I'm happy to send over some material for the group. The paper bags, not all paper bags are the same, just like not all plastic bags are the same, just like, not all things are the same. So it really depends on whether sustainable forestry is used, all types of things, how much electricity is used in producing the bags. They can actually take a tremendous amount of energy to make in the first place. So the idea is really not about recycling bags at the end of life. It's really about reducing the overall impact of these types of things. And just for example, if you only use a canvas tote once and throw it away, that's your worst option. I mean, that it takes a tremendous amount of energy to make a canvas tote. So you have to reuse it a certain number of times for it to be an effective replacement. Anyway, you can use the fee for a lot of different types of things. Education. The whole idea is to get people to stop paying the fee altogether by not taking a bag in the first place. If we just all keep giving out canvas bags and use as many canvas bags as we used to use plastic bags, that's actually a terrible failure, because we would use quite a lot more energy and create a lot more waste. So I think the education piece is something you can consider using the fee on. In Louisville, when I was the mayor, we decided we didn't want to do this as a fee, because as a fee, you can really only use it on bag related things. And so we went to our voters and did it as a tax. This was ahead of the statewide measure going into place. But I do think going to the legislature and instead of eliminating the paper bag fee, asking them to go to the voters for a tax on this would be interesting, because then you can actually use the revenue for more productive things that get at the root cause than you can with the way it's structured as a fee.
Thank you for that, Commissioner. Commissioner Vance.
California has had this fee on their small bags for quite some time, and I believe there was a study done that said that it was actually worse for their landfills because the reusable plastic bags were actually being used as one-time plastic bags, and that was kind of a problematic for them. And that might be something to research to see if that's actually happening out in California.
Thank you. Commissioner Marlin.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to add a data point from Clear Creek County to the value of the local portion of the fee. Pretty tiny jurisdiction. Our staff has indicated that it's really not of value to us to try and collect these fees, create a program to collect these fees. I've heard from merchants that they feel like they're placed in a little bit of an awkward space because of that decision. Maybe what's of most interest to me in this conversation would be allowing jurisdictions to opt to dedicate the fee to a state program or something. So that's just my initial thoughts on this.
Thank you. Commissioner Marin.
Good morning, everyone. Great to be here. And I am going to say I'm a big advocate of the 10-cent fee. We've seen big behavior change, and that's just observance. It's not, hard data, but we do struggle with our recycling program, and that little bit of money coming into our county to help support, it's $800 for every recycling, big dump trailer that we have to have shipped out of our landfill, and that money really helps. And also I see people bringing bags opening their vehicles and bringing bags, into Walmart, and it's just a beautiful sight. It just like it changed overnight. And that 10-cent fee, the 40% goes back to the store owner and allows them to, have some support for how people carry their stuff out of the store when they don't bring in their own. So I really like the behavior change aspect to it, and wanted to say that I'm not in favor of taking away this fee.
Commissioner Marion, how in Saguache County do you utilize that fee? Is it just generally into your recycling program or?
It is, and our recycling program struggles. And so, we just during my tenure implemented recycling at our landfill. And it's expensive, and the big dumpster boxes that the recycling company brings to us, they get full faster than we can keep up with them. And I think it's $880 for each one to be pulled out and replaced with an empty one. And so that's where the money goes, is just to help support that piece.
Thank you. Any other questions on this one? Okay, moving on, we will move into Health and Human Services. We've got retail food establishment fees, Eagle County. Do we have an Eagle County commissioner on the line? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Katie, have you had a chance to look at this one? Can you give a briefing?
Sure. Yeah, this would, as you can see in the proposal, there's a couple different possibilities with this one, but looking at the fees that you all are able to set on basically restaurant inspections that are conducted by your public health department. So the solutions that they have laid out would be to either just place exclusive authority to set the fee at the county level. Two, to just remove it from the state legislature's purview and move over to the State Board of Health's purview. Or number three, if one or two are not palatable, to just have an increase this cycle and possibly have kind of an automatic adjustment in place for that.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Commissioner Marion, is your hand still up from before, or do you have a question on this one?
Whoops, no.
I guess donuts for next time. Commissioner Corrigan.
Yeah, thanks. I think Routt County would support this. We do our own food inspections at a loss every year. And I can tell you, in a resort community where the importance of food safety is heightened, just from a public relations standpoint, our restaurants here locally, at least, really like the program, enjoy having that oversight to ensure that Routt County and Steamboat Springs doesn't end up with a black eye over a foodborne illness outbreak. And I believe that most of them would be happy to pay more money. So whatever the exact fix is, it would help us and our community if we could recoup some more of these expenses. So I'm generally supportive of what Eagle wants to do.
Great, thank you. Any other comments, questions on this one?
While I have you all here, I would be just curious, I know there are fees that you all are able to set as it is currently. There are fees that are set in statute that get updated according to some regular schedule or based on, inflation or cost of living. Just would kind of love to hear any pros or cons of any of those. I have a feeling I know what you're going to say, but would be nice to hear as well. And Commissioner Brown, I know you've got your hand up if you want to go ahead. And if you're not answering my question, that's fine too.
Sorry, yeah, I was a little delayed. I think San Miguel County would probably be in favor of this too, just in terms of the point being more local control and more understanding of what it really costs to provide these inspections.
Great, thank you. Anything else? Any thoughts around Katie's question? Okay, we can move on. I think next up, let's advance our slides. I think next up we are looking at justice and public safety. This proposal in front of you here has been requested to be removed by Larimer County, so we just bought ourselves a bunch of time. Let's move on. Dolores County, the floor will be yours to talk about, Douglas, I'm sorry, to talk about minimum sentencing for child prostitution offenses. A commissioner from Douglas County, please.
Hey guys, how are you? Can you see me?
Yes, sir.
Great. Well, hey, this is Abe Layden from Douglas County. I wanted to just share with you a big note of congratulations and gratitude, building upon the work that CCI did this last year. CCI was really successful under Director Flanagan and the work of Katie First and many groups and stakeholder conversations around moving the needle related to human trafficking. Of course, House Bill 24-1371 did pass. We did have some bipartisan support with a lot of great efforts and advocacy on behalf of CCI and others. Building upon that work, we heard from one of the main nonprofits that we work very closely with, and that's Janelle Goodrich from Silence to Saved. It is the premier nonprofit that is working with people encountering human trafficking throughout the Front Range. Once you look at this issue and are aware of it, you can't really look away. The statistic that always I reach back to is learning that there are more human trafficking sites along the Front Range than there are Starbucks. And you start to dig in, and the work that From Silence to Save has done is tremendous. Janelle cannot be here with us today, but is certainly very active, is working with our lobbyists, hopefully lobbyists here, and then a number of senators and representatives trying to identify bill sponsorship. But she brought forward a bill this last session, which was much broader than just the massage parlor bill that we worked on collaboratively at CCI. And her bill specifically was to increase criminal penalties on Johns. Meaning that there would be not just probation for individuals that were soliciting, these acts with children, but there would be significant criminal penalties associated with that. So the idea is, by increasing criminal penalties, it would truly act as a deterrent. Bad guys talk when they know that they can't come to Colorado, they can't come to Denver, they can't come to the Front Range. And just get a slap on the wrist for their atrocious behavior. The goal is deterrence. It was really challenging. That was the first bill that Janelle has ever run. Worked really hard on it. A number of us testified last year on that bill, and it went down in committee. This year, she's working much harder on stakeholding, trying to get ahead of the session and doing that good work with commissioners, senators, representatives, and leaders throughout the state. So this bill is really intended to come alongside this important nonprofit and build upon the great work that CCI has already accomplished in a very significant way this last year. Bipartisan, of course, the bill we ran this last year was supported on both sides of the aisle. Both here at Metro Area County Commissioners, and then of course at the legislature. So more to come. There's a lot of interest among senators and representatives to engage on this bill. There's also more awareness. And like I said, once you look at this issue and are aware of it, you can't look away. So I think it'd be fantastic if CCI could continue to lead on the fight against human trafficking in Colorado. And really demonstrate excellence when it comes to working for the lives of children. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any questions?
Commissioner, apologies. I haven't had a chance to go through and compare your proposal yet to House Bill 1092 from last year. Would you be proposing to start from the same place as 1092, or has Janelle already had conversations with other stakeholders about some compromises that might be able to be struck and get it through the process this year? And can you share what some of those might be?
Yeah, and I was looking through the agenda for today for all of our commissioner colleagues, and I was not finding a link to our one-page statement, but maybe you all have found it and have it in front of you. But it is pretty detailed, chapter and verse, all of the statutes that would potentially be affected. I think specifically the difference is the support and advocacy from the district attorneys. Last year, Janelle was sort of the Lone Ranger going at this from a level of expertise, but not having all of the stakeholding that needs to occur in order to successfully run a bill, which frankly, CCI is phenomenal at and has always been really great at advancing. So again, I think there's a little bit more meat on the bone, so to speak, this year. And not necessarily compromises, but it was interesting in committee last year, just to give you a flavor. There was a real distinction that Democrats drew between adults and children. The comment around sex work is work came up quite a bit. I don't agree with that at all. I think a 19-year-old that has on average been trafficked for 7 years spent most of that time as a minor being trafficked. So I think we need to take a hard look at that. But that said, we really want to zero in on youth and minors that are being trafficked. And we do believe that that would be supported in a bipartisan fashion among both commissioners and elected legislators.
Thank you. And thank you for the depth and that you put in on your proposal. You gave us a lot of research and statutes to look at. So appreciate that work. Again, I'm going to make a call. Any questions for Commissioner Layden? Okay. We will move on to our next one. Next slide, please. What we've got here is from Fremont County, and we are now moving into justice and public safety. So this is responsibilities of employer and civil judgments for civil rights violations. Do we have a commissioner or representative from Fremont County?
We have a couple of them. Good morning, everybody. Dwayne McFall, Commissioner. I've asked our illustrious county attorney, Brenda Jackson, to join us today, and I'm going to turn this over to Miss Jackson to talk about this one.
Hello, everybody. Fremont County has had a pretty negative experience with the so-called Integrity in Law Enforcement bill that's been around for several years right now. When that bill was passed, Fremont County was sued in 4 separate cases for civil rights violations by our deputy sheriffs. 2 of them were use of force cases. Insurance defended us, and we ended up settling those cases. 2 other cases involved a deputy who had inappropriate touching with inmates in the jail. He was subsequently convicted for those offenses and then sued the deputy under the Civil Rights Bill 1321-131. The bill, as it went through the legislature, did not include an exclusion for employers' indemnification obligation if the peace officer was subsequently convicted for the same conduct that gave rise to the civil rights violation. That's exactly what occurred in these 2 cases. The legislature discussed it in the House Finance Committee and amended that bill to add an exclusion that said an employer does not have to indemnify a peace officer in those circumstances. If the peace officer is convicted of an offense that resulted from the same conduct for the civil rights violation, unless the employer was played some kind of active role in the civil rights violation, which did not occur in our cases. The county refused to defend, and the county stated we would not indemnify because the statute did not require it. The peace officer moved out of state, was ultimately served and defaulted with 2 $50,000 judgments. So a $100,000 judgment against this peace officer who will never be able to pay it. So the plaintiffs then asked the court to require the county to pay this judgment, essentially indemnifying the peace officer for his criminal conduct. And the court read the statute and said, I agree. The county's on the hook for the entire 100,000 plus all of the attorney fees, because the statute seems to be unclear in the section that says, if the deputy is unable to pay his portion of the judgment, the county has to pay it. Well, the employer has to pay it. That context, however, if the peace officer acts in a willful and wanton manner, then he can be responsible for 5% of the judgment or $25,000, whichever is less. And that's the portion that the statute's referring to. The employer still has to indemnify for all judgments unless the employee committed a crime or was acting willfully. So the legislature intended that governmental employers not have to pay for criminal actions of their employees. That's how the law has always been. They had a specific discussion in the committee when they amended the bill, saying that there would be victims of civil rights violations who would not be compensated if the conduct was criminal on the part of the peace officer and he was convicted of the offense. Our district court judge essentially eliminated that part of the statute and said it doesn't apply because the deputy can't pay. So now we're in a position where we're going to have to appeal those two rulings. And I'm fairly confident we'll be successful on appeal, but the legislature did not draft it carefully enough, and it's subject to ambiguous interpretations. And our county just got hit with it. Granted, that is just a local district court decision at this point in time, but I can see this happening in other situations, both with municipalities and counties, simply because the statute isn't clear in the way it's drafted. It is clear in the intent, but it is not drafted in a tight manner as it should be. So the proposal from Fremont County is to clean up the language in that statute and make it clear that governmental employers are not required to indemnify peace officers for their own criminal actions while employed.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jackson. Any questions? Commissioner Thomas.
Yes, thank you. This is an interesting topic. Thank you for bringing it forward. Let me just ask Fremont County, are you aware of any other county through listserv questions has faced the same thing that you have faced?
When we were sued on these two cases, which was the end of 2022, beginning of 2023, I researched the legislative history, found the recording, and I think it was submitted with our fact sheet of the House Finance Committee discussing it. And I clipped it and I sent it out to all the other county attorneys on the listserv. And they all said, oh, we're not worried about it because there's a Court of Appeals case that seems to address the question. We are now dealing with CTSI and the pool in pursuing this appeal, and insurance is not aware of any other county, at least in the CTSI CAP pool, that has faced this kind of a decision. I saw it coming because plaintiff's counsel told me clearly that if he got judgments, he was going to come after the county, which is why I did the research. But so far, I'm not aware of any other counties that are facing what we're facing now.
And that answer doesn't change why I think Douglas County would support this, but I just wanted to have that additional information. So thank you for doing the research that you've done to bring this forward.
Thank you.
And I did send those corresponding documents with the deal, so CCI does have it if anybody would like to see those.
And if anyone wants to listen to that audio clip, I'm certainly happy to send it to you. If you get in touch with the commissioners, we'll get it to you.
Commissioner Marlin.
Yeah, hi, thank you for this presentation. Quick question. Did the case have anything to do with the language around due to inaction, action or inaction? Or is this solely related to sort of
It's
loose
solely
legislative language?
it is solely related to the provision that exists now that says, notwithstanding any other thing in this section, if the peace officer is unable to satisfy his portion of the judgment, the employer shall satisfy the judgment, language to that effect. And that's what the district court hung her hat on. It had nothing to do with action or inaction of the county, and that wasn't an issue that was even raised or in dispute. The county had nothing to do with the conduct of the deputy.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? And just to reiterate what Ms. Jackson said, if you'd like to see any of those materials, we're happy to kind of intermediary and get things to you. If that's helpful, just let us know. Okay, let's move on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, still within justice and public safety, county courthouse funding from El Paso County. Do we still have an El Paso County commissioner or representative on the line?
Good morning, everybody. Commissioner Geithner asked me to present this one. My name is Ryan Parcell. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for El Paso County, if that's okay with CCI.
This is Commissioner Gonzalez, but I did not have the information on this one. This was not one of my submitted.
Ryan, I guess.
All right, thank you. This may sound familiar to some of the folks that were involved in these legislative discussions.
Ryan, are you there?
Yes, can anybody hear me?
We got you.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, yes, I'm here, Commissioner Gonzalez. For those that were here last year, they may recall this discussion. When it comes to county's responsibilities to provide certain buildings, courthouses stand out as a unique facility that counties have to foot the bill for, mainly due to the fact that they're a large capital expenditure, but primarily housed by state employees, not county employees, which is a differential from the jail. I think a lot of counties, both big, small, and medium, struggle to pay for courthouses. And the trajectory of the state seems to be to add additional judges, whether because of caseload increases or population increases. And those judges and the staff associated with them have to be housed somewhere, and that generally comes down to the courthouse. So much like last year, this idea would be not to touch the general fund, because to Kelly's point earlier about the political environment, we understand that the general fund is really tight. In 2027, there's going to be a COP that comes up on the state level for mineral leases that would allow the state to fund up to $400 million in courthouse either improvement or construction without touching the general fund. And to help dole that out, we're recommending that this courthouse funding program would be structured similar to the BEST program, which is Building Excellent Schools Today, which is used to build schools in smaller school districts throughout the state. So we think that this is a good year to bring this back up, to have the discussions with people. El Paso County's had discussions with a lot of legislators about this to socialize the idea. But we see this as something that all counties need, all counties could benefit from, in fulfilling a unique obligation that we have to provide a county building to state employees.
Thanks, Ryan. Any questions? Commissioner Buxton Andrade.
I just have a quick one. Would it be possible that they pay some kind of rent instead of just doing it as a grant? And part of that funding be set aside for rent to all of the different counties? Even if it's pennies on the dollar, at least it'd be something.
And Commissioner, that's an interesting idea. I hadn't considered that. My only thought in structuring it this way is the potential impact to the general fund. You can fund capital construction through COPs where a rent cost, I think, would presumably come from the general fund, but open to that discussion, absolutely.
Thank you. Any other questions? Katie's got a question.
Hi, Ryan. Just wanted to confirm, so this would just be the financing of the construction of new courthouses, but not like a grant program from the state to help with the actual expenditures, correct?
So the BEST program, if I recall correctly, is set up something as a grant program that can be funded from a couple different areas, where you have to apply to get the funding for it and show certain criteria. So we've contemplated criteria such as doing a facilities study, a facilities use study to ensure that all the efficiencies out of an existing building have been met. So aside from that, I'm not sure if we have the same definition of grant in this context or not. So I'm not sure if I answered your question.
I guess I'll ask it this way. Are you just looking for assistance on the financing or also actual funding in addition to the financing? Because I think the BEST program is both.
Yeah, the BEST program is both.
Okay.
Just to tag on real quick, as you're comparing it or thinking about it similarly to the BEST program, does the proposal include that same dollar for dollar match?
I think it would necessitate a match. I don't think the BEST program is a dollar to dollar match, but it has been a little bit since I've looked at it. So, but I think the last that I recall, it varied, but I think it was roughly about 25% for the local district, because in a lot of these districts, I mean, they can't afford $35 million any more than they can afford 70. But it usually meant that the local district had to come up with a match to have skin in the game.
Thank you. Commissioner Campbell.
Hi, wonderful to be here with everyone today, and hello, Ryan. So Arapahoe County is in a similar situation, even with the 18th Judicial District being split up. We are behind on the number of courtrooms that we have and to catch up. So yeah, I mean, yeah, we need, our chief judge came and talked to all of us of like, hey, this is a for real problem. We got to talk about this because caseloads are lagging and all of that. But we're in the same situation where we're like, well, Chief, Chief Amico, like we don't really have the funding for that. So I am feeling you on this. My question is, a lot of the funding for the BEST program comes from taxes on cannabis sales. Have you guys thought about what funding mechanism and where money would go to fund this program?
Yeah, so by leveraging a COP that's already slated to come off of the books, we don't have to find any additional revenue. It'd just be, continuing on a fund obligation that is already set to expire. I'm familiar with the cannabis sales portion being another portion to build up the fund balance that the BEST program can use. I haven't identified anything similar to that to try to go beyond what the borrowing power would be of COBs that are already coming off of the books. And I think, as you're probably well aware, and so many other people on the call, some of those revenue streams that seemed really good a few years ago have been declining over the years. So didn't want to try to put this in the same category as like cannabis sales or something like that for that reason.
Thank you. Commissioner Thomas.
Yes, good morning. This is not, I recently had a conversation with a technology guy because I went through our courthouse and there were no trials going on. All the courtrooms were empty. And I talked to this guy who does technology to schedule people to use golf courses and putting ranges. And he thinks that he could develop some software where judges aren't going to like this because other people would be using their courtrooms. But if it's a way for us to keep the courtroom flowing and the casework done. So this is just to let you know that this is something Douglas County is looking at instead of building a new courthouse.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think that's important. You know, if there's going to be assistance to expanding or constructing a new courthouse, I think there has to be a demonstrated attempt to make sure that the space is maximized and get away from the idea of like, you know, this is my particular courtroom, nobody else can use it or something like that. So, you know, I think it has to be used as a last resort when everything else has been tried and exhausted.
And it's a great suggestion. I'm not saying I don't support it, but like you said, it's another step we're taking to try to maximize the use of what we already have.
Exactly.
Commissioner Marlin.
Yeah, is there interest in adding jail funding to this?
Yeah, Commissioner, I know that that's something that came up last year. A couple of things with that. I think from a staffing perspective, jails are primarily staffed with county employees, where courts are generally staffed with state employees, which I think might strengthen the argument where the state needs to help intervene and help cover the cost for their employees to have a place to work. And then to the extent that, you know, finding the funding to for these large capital construction projects, it can get eaten up pretty quick. And so if we double the amount of buildings that we're trying to cover with a program like this, it doubles the amount of money that we need to find in a fiscal environment where that could be tough to do.
Thank you. Any additional questions? All right. Hearing none, let's move on. Moving into land use and natural resources, our first proposal comes from Mesa County, improvements to water sampling for impaired stream segments. Do we have a Mesa County Commissioner or representative on the line?
Yeah, good morning, Cody Davis, Mesa County Commissioner. Thank you all for this. I've got, I believe, our attorney online as well. I'll go through this briefly. It's pretty technical in nature, so I'll try to be brief and high level. The current law, the Colorado Water Quality Control Act, requires the discharge of pollutants from a point source, which is just an identifiable source, to comply with water quality standards. However, the act does not require these permit conditions to be based on current scientifically accurate data. And the difference between point source pollution and non-point source pollution is you can identify where point source is coming from. You can't really identify where non-point source pollution comes from. So like most agriculture out here in Western Colorado is still flood irrigation, and they pull off selenium, E. coli, things like that, iron off the soils and but you can't tell where it comes from. And we also have a large northern desert in our watershed that is owned by a BLM that also, when it rains, it can shed a lot of those pollutants into our water as well. So real quickly, what is a TMDL? A TMDL is a total maximum daily load that is set on impaired waters. So when waters, drainage waters, reach a certain level of pollutant, higher than a set standard, the Water Quality Control Commission sets a TMDL. But it doesn't require them to use current scientifically accurate data. And so a few years ago, there was a TMDL set on Mesa County that used kind of standardized data statewide. And we have a very specific hydrology here in Western Colorado, as well as the higher base load of certain minerals within our water. So the level that we're being held, the standard we're being held to, is higher than even our base load, much higher than our base load. And so we're being held accountable for stuff that we shouldn't be held accountable for. So that's essentially what the problem is. In certain instances, our TMDL has been, that was placed on us, they utilized data that was over 50 years old, and data that wasn't scientifically accurate for our local hydrologic complexities. We have irrigation water deliveries, transbasin flows, massive BLM desert watersheds, and more. And from CDPHE, they say that TMDLs are not regulations, and they do not impose regulations from point source discharges, nor non-point sources discharges such as runoffs or agriculture. The TMDLs, they say, are used to analyze, identify, target, and pollutant reductions, which we agree with. If we're responsible for the pollutant, we want to be responsible for it, but we're being held responsible for more pollutants than should be. So what we feel is the solution, and for context, after our TMDL was placed upon us, we appealed it to CDPHE, and we were denied. But in that process, as we deposed the experts who actually put the TMDL, they admitted they had bad data, but they said our rules allow us to use bad data, and that's almost verbatim. We have bad data, but our rules allow us to use bad data. So what Mesa County would like to see, and we ran this bill a year and a half ago, but because we were in active appeal of our TMDL, most people really didn't want to touch it. We actually had both Republican and Democrat support for the bill, but wanted to step back and wait for us to go through our appeal process. So we'd like to bring this next year. It could affect every county. It could affect anybody with a water quality control permit, a MS4. So what we want to do is require CDPHE to use appropriate data and let CDPHE hire the analysts it needs to do so. I think you're going to see opposition, possibly from CDPHE, saying it costs too much to provide accurate data. But I believe the cost of implementing TMDLs with poor underlying data could be massive, and I don't think counties or municipalities should have to bear the brunt of bad data. The proposed legislation removes both uncertainty and increases transparency to provide more and better data to the agencies responsible for improving water quality in Colorado. And again, we want to be responsible for what we're responsible for in terms of water quality. We don't want to be responsible for everything that happens at a base level of water quality. So, and I've got my attorney on the line as well if there's questions I can't answer.
Okay, thank you for that very much, Commissioner. Any questions? Commissioner Paget.
Yeah, hi. So I guess a quick question on this is, if the issue is that they're using stale data to come up with TMDLs, they being CDPHE, why not take this through the CDPHE rulemaking process? Why run a state legislation that might change things across the board instead of dealing with your specific situation? Because I recognize that you said you lost an appeal. And then they have, CDPHE does a tri-annual, they call it, so it's like a once in every 3 years. They gather about 5 years of water quality data through what they call a data call from each of the individual basins or sub-basins that then go along with the corresponding rule. And I know I could get really technical on this too, but they have like Reg 31 and Reg 32 and all the way to Reg 38. So wouldn't the issue be with CDPHE's rulemaking and require them to not consider outlier data rather than run a state bill? That's my question.
Yeah, if that's a possibility, I'm definitely open to that opportunity. It didn't seem like CDPHE, and in the appeal was based on their current rules. So yes, they admitted we've got outlying poor data, antiquated data, but we're allowed to use that within our rules. So if they're willing to change the rules, yeah, I guess this legislation is needed. At the same time, I don't think the legislation, I think this legislation would be warranted as well. I mean, given that it would require good data. If we can rely on rulemaking to do that, great. But and we can look into that as well. So I think it's a good comment, Lynn.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk more offline about it. And then another option could be in your watershed, working with a watershed group or even your county environmental health department to get more modern data. And it could be that, I can't speak for CDPHE, but it could be that they didn't feel that they had enough data, so they went back further in time. to grab enough data, the n numbers of the different sampling times. But maybe another solution is because they have to redo the TMDLs every so many years. You could be collecting data that proves your point, that is high quality water data, that's from the areas that you're speaking of. And a lot of groups do that. They do collect data or work with partners to collect data and submit that to the state every 3 years or even more frequently for hundreds of constituents.
Yeah, and we have that data, and we have provided that to CDPHE, but they were unwilling to utilize the data that we collected locally in the implementation of the TMDL.
If I may chime in, Commissioner?
Yeah.
This is Todd Starr, Mesa County Attorney. Thank you, Commissioner Paget. I think your comments are salient. I might push back a little bit and suggest that, first of all, this is not just a Mesa County issue. For instance, Pueblo and many municipalities like Lakewood will support us in this because they're starting to see it in other areas. And it's the issue isn't so much the rulemaking. I feel like CDPHE is getting so much pressure from the federal government that they're just forced to charge forward. In our instance, they actually used a 6th grade science project as part of their evidence, and they accepted that. So who can argue with good science? And all we're asking is if you're going to do this and you're going to force counties across the state to expend these monies, let's make sure it's good science. And the problem with the rulemaking process that I perceive is I think it is every 3 years. And they're in 3 years, they're going to have at least 7 or 8 more TMDLs imposed on counties across the state.
Thank you. Commissioner Campbell.
Yes, I'd just like to chime in. I'm very much in support of what Mesa County is talking about. We're 3 years into trying to get a wastewater permit, and they keep changing their answers because of the data that they want to use. We had outside consultants do studies on a stream that has water in it and has fish in it, and they won't accept it because they said our data is more important than your data, even though we used an outside scientific consultant company, and they just are unwavering on what their restrictions are be. And we've been held up trying to do a wastewater design because they keep changing what requirements are in this water. And some of this water comes from miles and miles away, and it's undeterminable where some of this is happening, but they want us to fix it, even though it's natural. Some of it is very existent in the everyday water in our environment, and they do not want to listen to any argument or discussion on it. So we've been fighting City Hall, so to speak, on this issue for years and years, and they don't really care what type of data is presented. So I'd be very much in support of helping Mesa County on this because of what we've been facing for 3 years trying to get a wastewater permit because of the water quality that they say exists, and we can prove that it doesn't. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Church.
Yeah, if follow-on legislative or grant decisions or funding decisions are based upon faulty data, there's no excuse for using faulty data. I think we need the legislation, which will force a rule change in the long run. So I would support this.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you. Let's move on. Next slide, please. We will move into tax and finance. Our next proposal comes from La Plata County to increase the cap of county lodging tax. Do we have a commissioner or representative from La Plata County?
Yes, Matt Salka here.
Thank you. Floor is yours.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, commissioners. Our focus is on empowering counties to implement a lodging tax of up to 6%, aligning them with municipal capabilities and unlocking substantial potential for local growth and development. Currently, counties are limited by a statutory cap of 2% on lodging tax dating back from 1987, whereas municipalities enjoy a greater flexibility. This hampers our county's ability to adequately fund vital services and infrastructure that are essential for fostering vibrant communities and attracting tourists. This limitation affects county's ability to fund crucial services and infrastructure, putting us at a disadvantage. Numerous other states have successfully implemented higher lodging taxes without seeing detrimental effects on tourism demand. These states have used the additional revenue to boost local economies and support community services. By allowing counties to raise the lodging tax rates through voter-approved ballot measures, we can address several critical needs: increase revenue to promote local tourism, enhance housing availability, improve childcare services, and still enriching visitors' experiences. An essential aspect of this proposal is local control. Any increase in the lodger's tax would require voter approval, ensuring that any decision to raise taxes reflects the collective will of our counties. This bill includes additions, allowing infrastructure, enhancing public infrastructure such as roads, bridges, and trails, improving accessibility and safety for our residents and visitors. Environmental conservation, investing in projects that preserve our natural landscapes and promote sustainable tourism practices. Cultural preservation, supporting the restoration and maintenance of historical sites and cultural institutions. And public safety, strengthening public safety measures, including funding for law enforcement and emergency services. Under Dillon's rule, counties lack the authority to independently adjust their lodging tax rates beyond their current cap. This legislative remedy is necessary to empower counties to meet their financial needs responsibly and effectively. The proposed legislative change would amend the statute, allowing counties to raise lodging taxes rates through voter-approved process. This change ensures responsible and effective financial management, benefiting both residents and visitors alike. I've spoken to Senator Cleve Simpson and Representative Barbara McLaughlin. Both are supportive due to it being a voter-approved process. We have a unique opportunity to secure additional revenue streams vital for enhancing tourism, infrastructure, local businesses, and community services. Raising the lodger tax cap from 2% to up to 6% will provide the necessary funds to improve our communities, attract tourists, and support local businesses. I ask for your support in advocating for this important legislative change. Any questions?
Commissioner Marin.
I'm just curious how you, I didn't hear in there how you would be supporting local businesses with that increase.
Well, so there would be, local businesses would be any infrastructure improvements if you're using third party for, infrastructure, as well as the supporting restoration and maintenance of historical sites. So that would take, it wouldn't be, La Plata County for sure wouldn't be improving those, as well as public safety, which would, law enforcement, emergency services, which would benefit local businesses.
Thank you.
Commissioner Richardson.
Thank you, and I may have missed it in the presentation. The intent of this is to apply only in the unincorporated areas, not to stack on any current tax for the municipality.
Yes, and that would be, this does not affect or touch any municipalities that have a current lodger's tax. So this would be for county lodger's tax only.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Next up, we have a proposal from Yuma County, electric vehicle charging station fee collection. Do we have commissioner or representative from Yuma County?
Yes, thank you, Kelly. I'm on here. This is Scott Weaver, Yuma County. As most of you know, I try to attack Huft every year that I can and try to get some more money. In Yuma County, we have over 2,400 miles of roads that we have to maintain. And we're finding that we're having a really hard time doing that anymore with the cost of equipment, fuel, labor, all those things. So we really look at Huft quite a bit. And my proposal, along with, and I think Chris is in this with me, from Elbert County, we've talked quite a bit about it, is to implement a tax at the charging stations for electric vehicles. Now, Senate Bill 260 increased the EV registration fee, and from what I understand, it is taking it from $50 to $100 per year. And on average, if you drive about 10,000 miles in a gas car, you're contributing over $150 a year. I have not done that math. I've been given that math to me from CDOT. So just to make it really long introduction here, a short one, we're trying to put a tax on electric vehicle charging stations. Now, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be discussed on this. If I'm charging my vehicle at home, I've been asked that question. Well, what if we charge our vehicle at home? Well, I've even been proposed and told maybe what we should do is have electric vehicle charging stations in homes regulated. That way we make sure that the power in the house is good. And then once those are regulated, they're licensed, and then they're taxed on those also. I haven't gotten in the weeds with that, but we're proposing a tax on electric vehicle charging stations. I got all kinds of other information that I can go through, but I don't think I need to waste time at this point.
Thank you. Any questions? Commissioner Macy's.
Yeah, hi, thanks so much for this. I'm a little confused on how this is going to roll out. I'm an electric vehicle user, so, you know, I've definitely been through my fair share of challenges with the charging stations simply in and of themselves. Do they work? Who owns them? How do you figure out what to do when they don't work? You know, where are they? I mean, there's just so much already as far as these things not being incredibly slick. So I'm just kind of trying to figure out if you could walk it out for me a little bit about, like, how does the tax look? Is it on who collects it? Where's it remitted? Like, how does it, is it on the actual amount of use? Is it on the station itself? Just some of those details. And maybe they're in the proposal that I should just take another look.
No, and I probably didn't. I didn't spread my proposal out like that. It's on the use of it, you know, as it's just like anything, or just like the gas stations. For every gallon, there's a certain amount pulled out for taxes, and then those taxes get distributed through the HUF program. It's going to be based on, and I'm not an electrician, kilowatts, megawatt, however they are doing that through the electrical process. We would just make a tax on each one of those kilowatts, watts, whatever it is.
Okay, well, thank you. That's helpful. And I'm not
Thank you.
suggesting that this is a good or a bad idea. I have to give it some additional thought, but I just feel like the flimsy nature of the way that the electric vehicle charging infrastructure is set up right now, and I know that I get in trouble for saying that, but frankly, the infrastructure is really challenging already. I just don't know that it's going to be very easy to implement. So it's just something to think a little bit more through.
You bet. I agree with you. It is a mess. Well, let's all be honest. It's a mess, but we need. I think every county in the state of Colorado needs help with HUFT in our county roads, and this is one way to do it. And maybe this would shore up those infrastructures and help us get to a point where it does make sense.
Yeah, thanks. And I will look into this on my own a little bit more before we have our next meeting as well, because I think it's a very interesting idea.
Thank you. And just real quick, Byron Pelton, our senator here, is more than willing to help out on this also.
Thank you. Commissioner McFall.
Hey, thank you. Just real quick. So how did they, if they raised the price on registering electric vehicles, how did that affect HUTF? Because I know I've been trying to figure that out myself. And I think if there's a better way to readjust that formula, but tell me a little more about that if you know, Scott.
Well, I do have some graphs. The state, CDOT did send me some graphs, and quite honestly, it has not affected it very much at all. But what they do is they continue to give us graphs and tell us, like right now, I've got a graph of electrical vehicle growth assumptions. And it's funny when we get a graph from the CDOT, and they use that word assumptions. And also the bottom of it, it says the forecast assumes sales targets under the Colorado Clean Cars standard will be met. So they're assuming all this. Right now in 2023, they showed that there was 82,000 electric vehicles. Within 10 years, by 31, they expect to have 942,000 electric vehicles in the state of Colorado. So they're giving me all kinds of information that how this is going to grow, and it's going to actually take, you know, we see the gas tax go down, but the registration fees are going to come up, and they do have an incremental increase every year on those fees. But it just, to me, it does not look like it's going to come through.
So they're basing it on their assumption of their 2030 demand, and it's not going to get there. The CDOT's claim there's less than 1% electric vehicles out there. I just don't think we're getting the benefit from even the few that are out there on the HUTF versus the gas vehicles.
No,
that are out
there. It's just not equal in how it's playing out.
Yeah, thanks.
Commissioner Richardson.
Thank you. Yeah, and just, I guess writ large, the issue is per mile, the EVs are not contributing as much to HUFT as the per mile contribution of a gasoline or diesel powered vehicle. And generally they're heavier than what they replace and cause more wear and tear on the road. So I think just finding a way to get to some equity, as more EVs, if projected, replace, the problem gets worse as maintenance cost increases. Not a big fan of fees that look like taxes, but that seems to be somewhat the direction of the state. And if I have an opportunity there, there'll be a house sponsor on something in this area. So, thanks.
You bet. And thank you. Thanks, Chris. CDOT's actually asked me the question, do you want a tax or a fee? And I said, I want to stay away from fees. You know, let's just make it exactly the same as a gas tax.
Commissioner Corrigan.
Yeah, I own an all-electric vehicle, and but I'm still supportive of paying my fair share. My question is, at one time, were we not looking at a vehicle mile traveled tax and or simply a tax on tires? Because either of those would certainly get to the issue of people like me that almost exclusively charge my vehicle at home. And I think it would be really complicated to set up meters to distinguish between home electricity and vehicle electricity. Seems to me that the VMT or the tire tax is a simpler solution.
The home charging is a very difficult component of this. Vehicle miles traveled, we're relying on people telling us the truth.
Well, I can tell you there was a study on vehicle miles traveled. Norm Steen, who used to be a Teller County Commissioner, was involved with that through CDOT. And they had little units that you had to put in your car. And then that just kind of went by the wayside, but it was to keep track of those vehicle miles traveled for that purpose.
Yeah, if I can jump in. And the issue also comes, we lose the tourism dollars, out of state traffic through, and people that don't replace their tires while they're in Colorado.
Very good.
I mean,
point.
there's just, I mean, it's a big issue. I don't think we have solid language or exactly how to attack, but the issue of parity, as the mix of EVs and internal combustion changes needs to be looked at, and also just the level of impact of EVs versus ICEs on the road differs. So there's work to be done, and probably more than a sixth grade science project, as we heard in the water discussion.
And so at the risk of suggesting something that nobody ever likes, have you thought about a study committee, a bill to run a study on this, Scott?
Yes, I have. It didn't go very far.
Because I could certainly support some kind of a rational study that really gets to the heart of the problem and comes up with a sustainable practical solution for the long term.
Commissioner Fiedler.
Yeah, I had my head up, but it was really the same point that Commissioner Cargan was just raising. I think, trying to figure out that equity between people who home charge and, charging stations. There's already a pretty big inequity in terms of what you get charged per kilowatt hour. So, I think, a well-crafted study about, get to the heart of the issue of how do you replace that HETF fee, or how do we keep having everyone pay their fair share to use their roads and keep the roads maintained? But yeah, so it is really the same point.
Thank you. Commissioner Macy's.
Yeah, I would be remiss if I did not introduce the idea that any study bill should also be considering not only the impact of the vehicle to the road, but also the impact of the tailpipe emission of the vehicles to air quality and to the costs associated with mitigating air quality impacts. There's no question at all that electric vehicles are heavy and, not as heavy as when I pull my horse trailer, but they're heavy and they have an impact on the roads. But at the same time, when we look at the tailpipe emissions, they're not creating as much of an impact that we that then have to pay for in other ways. So I think a study bill would be a really good thing. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Energy Office is already thinking about this.
Thank you. Any additional questions? All right. Next up, still within tax and finance, we've got a proposal from Clear Creek County and Summit County for county revenue diversification. Do we have a representative who'd like to make their pitch?
Yeah, good morning. George Marlin here, Clear Creek County. I'm going to start with a description of this proposal, and then Tamara Pogue is going to correct me where I got it wrong and fill in what I missed. So this proposal is largely a response to what's happening to counties' main two sources of revenue, sort of tax proposal authorities. The brief history, we know this well, so I'll be very brief. In 2022, we saw a bill reduce assessment rates. I went to the bill signing. What we saw in that bill was what we saw in the rhetoric at the bill signing. Counties found themselves at the back of the line and almost an afterthought in the legislature. The bill sponsors went through a long list of the crucial public services that they needed to defend that rely on property taxes, in which counties were not mentioned. 2023, we all know what happened. We saw a special session leading into the 2023 session. We saw a grand bargain that appears not to have worked. Now we're looking at possibly another possible special session during this interim. We face the threat of initiatives 50 and 108 in Clear Creek County. Initiative 108 could cost 14% of Clear Creek County's general fund revenue. Initiative 50 is nearly impossible to model the impacts of. And so, the theme here is that we do not control our future in property taxes, and we need to do something about that. I would also point out in sales taxes, we now have fire departments with the ability to propose sales taxes. This is a crucial public service with a lot of capital needs, and I think we can expect the leftover space in sales tax to continue to get more difficult to get after for counties. And so what we're doing, the response that I think is a bipartisan response, as evidenced by the multiple proposals, is a lot of interest in how can we diversify our revenue streams and gain additional options and alternatives to provide the services that our constituents expect and deserve. So what I'm not going to do is go through the three concepts that are listed in this proposal. Happy to answer questions about them, because what I really want to emphasize is that we are proposing a process to identify options that are available to other types of local governments in Colorado, maybe that show effectiveness in other states or are just otherwise well-developed and counties don't have access to. So really those three concepts are intended as examples only. The ideas we're seeking would have the following components, right? They would be completely permissive. If county thinks it's a good option, use it. If you don't, then don't. The idea that works would work well for all counties or as many counties as possible. It would be a very flexible tool. It would allow for us to create a better match between the people creating impacts in our communities who are not always our local citizens and those who are citizens can choose to charge a tax to mitigate that impact. Right now, they can only really choose to charge a tax on themselves while they watch others create impacts on them. Lastly, it would have adequate guardrails to prevent prohibitive taxation on private activity. Nobody wants to set that situation up where a neighbor can damage an economy next door. So just to be very clear, what we're offering is to alter this proposal to match the outcome of what seems to be a very live, quickly moving bipartisan conversation with a lot of interest in exploring revenue diversification. So we look forward to a live conversation. We seek your feedback. We'll be paying close attention to the outcomes and feedback delivered in the district meetings and have a keen interest in setting up some other opportunities to explore this with people. So that is the approach and the proposal here. Tamara, what did I get wrong and what did I miss?
You didn't get anything wrong, George. Thanks. So I'll just add that as a representative on the Property Tax Commission, there are a couple of things that have happened lately that I think really do put us in a position where we need to think about how we are going to ensure that counties can continue to provide and have adequate services, funding to provide our required services moving forward. You know, one of those was the decoupling of the assessment rate for school districts versus local government. Right? That allows the legislature to really protect the school funding formula while doing whatever they need to do to lower county assessment rates. The other thing I found concerning was a presentation from Director Ferrandino where he was talking about what the state might have to do if 108 and 50 were passed. And the number one proposal was moving HUTF funding into the general fund so that they could use those dollars to count for backfill to meet the requirements of 50. You know, however we feel philosophically about taxation and what services local government should provide, the bottom line is property taxes are going to become less and less reliable in an environment where the public, at least what we heard on the Property Tax Commission in a variety of town halls across the state, the most common theme was that the voters actually want as much control over taxation in the hands of local government as possible. So this, you know, when George and I started talking about this conversation, the idea really was to begin to have a conversation with all of you about what tools, you know, maybe those are tools that municipalities already have, we would all like that would actually benefit each of our communities. So as George said, the request today is just a commitment from some folks to engage in a conversation about what might make sense. I would love to have all of the representatives from each of the taxation and finance bills today in that conversation. And maybe there is one larger bill that we all can embrace that would help resolve all of our concerns. I think ultimately that kind of bipartisan approach would lead us to something that is more successful.
Thank you, commissioners. Commissioner Lasky.
I just want to say thank you, Tamara. That is a perfect summary of everything that took place, and I have the same concerns.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right. Thank you both. Next up, still within tax and finance, we've got a proposal from Eagle County, property tax proceedings. Do we have a representative from Eagle County? Was this El Paso or Eagle?
Oh, sorry, this is Eagle.
Okay. Eagle, are you there? Okay. Dylan, have you had a chance to review this proposal to give an overview? Thank you.
Do a high-level overview, but they provided a 3-page supporting material document that I think really gets to the underlying issue that this seeks to solve, that there are several areas that they've identified that they believe in the process of tax proceedings can be improved, which will help lower costs and increase efficiency through throughout the process for counties. So the first one is transparency and selection and creation of standards for evaluation and performance of the Board of Equalization. They identify several statutes that they believe need to be addressed and changed to help this process move more smoothly. The second area also related to the BAA is the ability of respondents to move cases to district courts. They believe they've seen a long, many years dissatisfied. People are dissatisfied with the process to get the cases going through the district court. In these scenarios, these legal and evidentiary decisions are being made by BAA members without the proper legal background, and they believe that this process could at times be better solved through the district court process. So they identified 3 or 4 different ways that they could make this smoother, I guess. And I'm really sorry, I'm not a lawyer on exactly what all this does. But what they're trying to do is find a way to make sure that the relevant and appropriate people are reviewing these cases in a timely manner, which kind of gets to their third idea, which is related to the tax appeal process and the removal of disincentives to reasonable resolution and or penalties for false reporting. They really are looking here at the significant penalties for failure to disclose information to the Department of Revenue. They believe that the legislature should reform property tax disclosure laws to include penalties for misrepresentations and or requirements that property owners are bound by prior disclosures. In addition, the legislature may also want to review the penalty tax refund provisions that provide 1% per month interest on any refunds. They believe this has become a perverse incentive to stall tax resolution appeals cases through timely disclosure and prosecution of cases. And then finally, the last area they identified was tax agents regulation of conduct. In Colorado, there's no requirement for licensure or regulation for an individual to act on behalf of a property owner. They believe that because there is no regulation, this leads to abuse of the system and expense to state and local resources. Essentially, these individuals, they would purport are charging large fees without any actual interest to settle the claims. Several other states, including California, Texas, Arizona, and Illinois, have all done licensing and regulation for these professions, and they believe this is something that the state of Colorado should also look at doing. Once again, those 4 proposals are all meant to increase the efficiency within the property tax assessment process within counties. Their belief is it will lower costs and ultimately save counties and citizens money in the end.
Thanks, Dylan. Any questions? All right. Moving on, we've got a proposal from Pitkin County here. The ability for local governments to implement a real estate transfer tax with voter approval. Do we have a commissioner or a representative from Pitkin County available?
Yes, ma'am. Levi Borst with the manager's office in Pitkin County. I can speak to this.
Thank you. Floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for your time this morning. This is definitely not a new issue, and it really dovetails with Clear Creek and Summit's proposals about revenue generation, revenue diversity. As we know, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights in 1992 has a specific provision which prohibits any new real estate transfer taxes or changes to any existing real estate transfer taxes. So we would like to propose to lobby the legislature to refer a statewide ballot measure to the voters of Colorado to amend that Tabor language and remove that provision which specifically prohibits local jurisdictions from seeking a real estate transfer tax. Just for a little background, last session we had a working group where we tried to create legislation that would allow statutory counties to install a real estate transfer fee. And I think we had pretty good support and a lot of interest. And upon checking in with the governor's office before we actually submitted the bill, we learned that the governor would veto any fee that he saw as increasing the cost of housing. So we don't feel like it's time to run that measure again. And we do feel like in the ability for local governments to decide whether or not a real estate transfer tax is something that could benefit them. We'd simply like the authority to take that proposal to our voters and let them decide whether or not that's something they feel fits the community. So again, I don't want to rehash any of the comments that Tamara and George made. I think we're still talking about the same revenue generation idea, and this is certainly not a new concept, but one that we feel is a good time to run a statewide ballot measure. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for reference, these proposals are in the updated agenda that we linked here at the beginning of the chat. So if you need to reference those, you can find them in our updated agenda. Commissioner Corrigan.
Yeah, thanks to Pitkin County for bringing this forward. You know, we can draw a straight line between real estate speculation on short-term rental properties, second homes, et cetera, that have absolutely driven up the cost of housing in many of our communities, and certainly in Routt County. And it does seem like this isn't up CCI's main alley. This is a local control issue. We're just looking for the authority to ask our voters here locally if they're willing to support a real estate transfer tax. And then we can discuss how we would use those funds. Routt County would certainly use that money to enhance our affordable housing efforts. So strongly in support of this, and I'm really hoping that CCI can get behind it.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown.
San Miguel County also strongly supports this. Thank you, Pitkin County, for bringing it up.
Thank you, Commissioner. One thing I would offer kind of as we look at some of these proposals, whether it be the proposal from Pitkin that we're discussing right now or our previous proposals with Summit and Clear Creek, I would be very happy to sort of reconvene our property tax working group that we built during the legislative session to discuss these issues and really work collaboratively to bring forward our very best. So if you are interested in participating in that, I would be very happy to staff and get that coordinated to really help us kind of build out our very best case. I see Commissioner Pogue, you popped back on. Do you have something to add?
I was just going to say, I think that's a great place for this conversation, Kelly. Appreciate you raising it and very supportive of moving that forward.
Wonderful. Any other questions for Pitkin County on this particular proposal? Okay. Next up, Katie, what do we have next? My papers are all weird. Okay, TRED, El Paso County Construction Defect Reform. Do we have representative from El Paso County? Ryan, are you still there?
I am still here, but Commissioner Geithner wanted to speak to this one.
And I'm right here.
Perfect. Commissioner Geithner, please go ahead.
Thank you. So I don't think that this topic is one that we are a stranger to. As we all know, there's been quite an effort over the last couple of sessions to address issues around housing. And one of the issues that has continually come up amongst many of us here, as well as across the state, is the issue of not being able to build entry-level homes from the market standpoint, especially condos. And obviously there was an effort on this and a couple of bills that came through but they were not able to come to, agreement on how to move forward on that. I still think it's a very important conversation. I think it's particularly relevant as the state has, put some pressure and said that, hey, counties need to be tracking this, and we've had some obvious goals put in place, an analysis that we're going to need to be doing. However, I think this is an important tool if we as counties are actually going to be able to contribute to solving this issue. So I think it's very relevant. I do know that there is already talk about this. Unfortunately, we were not able to touch base with Shannon Bird before this meeting today, but I am hearing from others that she is very interested in taking this on as well. Totally a bipartisan effort. I know that there's a lot of work to be done to get to consensus on how it gets done, and that was a lot of what happened last time. But I think that since it is going to continue to be an ongoing conversation, we have been brought into this housing conversation, and we're being asked to help fix it. That it's important that we be at the table and help this effort along.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, hearing none. Next up, I think we've got Pitkin County on deck again here for tax credit incentives for sustainable aviation fuel.
Hey, Kelly.
Yeah.
Hi, sorry. Can we go back to that? I just have one note on
Sure.
Construction defect stuff. I think, Commissioner Geithner, I think there were a lot of us who were very involved in wanting to make sure we have that entry level of housing that's affordable for folks at that level across the state. One thing I will just say, based on the conversations that happened last year, is that, in any right to remedy in any of these kinds of options, I think, yes, let's resolve it quickly. Let's make sure, but we really need to not, and I know that, Arapahoe County's position when we were looking at 106 and some of the conversations we were having was really focusing on making sure we're not correcting the problems with the process on the backs of the homeowners, and so, or potential buyers, and making sure that, we're not sacrificing their rights in this process. And so just that one perspective of that, because it is a balance, and some of the proposals that came in last year it just wasn't clear on how we were preserving those owners' rights. And so just from the other side of the aisle, from the county perspective, that's one thing that we will definitely be looking at as we look for these solutions as well. But glad to see the conversations going forward, because obviously, it didn't get solved last year. And so just wanted to share that perspective as you all are having those conversations. That's going to be one of the first things that I think a lot of us look at in the balance of how we're solving this problem.
And I'll just say, I agree on that. It is about the balance, right? Of course, I also want to make sure that, homeowners, it's a huge investment for them. That's the value, right? It's such a step forward in their ability to, to actually achieve the American dream. And so it is very important to balance that. I agree. I think it's not surprising that a really difficult topic like this didn't get done immediately, because again, I think it takes a lot of talk about different perspectives to balance that. So I'm just really excited to keep that conversation going and getting all of our perspectives here. And as I said, being at the table as we continue to work to solve that. I think that having CCI engaged on this will make sure that we get more effort into correcting that balance and really hitting a solution that makes sense.
Thank you both. Okay, we are moving to a proposal from Pitkin County, tax credit incentives for sustainable aviation fuel. Levi, you ready to go?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning again, everyone. Thanks for humoring us on this one. It's kind of a newer idea. And we're seeing a lot of local interest in our FBO operators, our general aviation, as well as commercial carriers for a more locally sourced and more affordable means to use a drop-in sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF. And currently, when we use SAF, I think we import from California is the nearest refinery. And so this proposal is to either support new legislation or to amend existing legislation, which will help incentivize not only local or more regional consumption and production of sustainable aviation fuel, maybe from a producer standpoint and also from a consumer standpoint. And so this came from some legislation in Illinois, I believe, where they offer a $1.50 per gallon tax incentive for sustainable aviation fuel. And I think currently, price-wise, it's just not as competitive as it needs to be. And there just aren't that many facilities around that are producing and transporting and installing it. So we've committed locally with some of our other regional organizations and governments to a few feasibility studies to look at different means of production, whether they be small and local or regional or statewide. And we'd like to support some means of tax incentivization to encourage the increased use and production of SAF. So something that I would say, in addition to this, we had House Bill 24-1235 last session, which was to reduce the aviation impacts on communities. And a big portion of that was to transition away from leaded aviation fuel. So of course, SAF is not leaded aviation fuel. So we feel like there could be an opportunity to amend an existing legislation to include this incentive. And admittedly, this is a new thing for us, so I'm happy to answer any questions that I can, but we're still in the pretty preliminary phases of that. We'd just like to explore some tax incentives to get that industry moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Macy's.
Yeah, I believe that Broward County would be in strong support of this. There is some integration already happening with sustainable aviation fuel at our FBO. But more interestingly, since it sounds like Eagle County is not on the call here, we are actually having a joint meeting with Eagle County. It sounds like they are using some technology to convert municipal solid waste into sustainable aviation fuel, and they intend to inform us how they're doing that at our next joint meeting with them in August. So I think this is a really interesting area, and would love to see something advance. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am. I didn't mention that. I didn't want to call anybody out, but we've been in the same conversations with Eagle County and a couple different exploratory models that we're looking at. One is municipal waste, as you mentioned. They're smaller facilities that could be installed at, countywide landfills. And then another option is, maybe some agricultural byproducts like, I don't know, corn stalks or other organics that would be in a more regional or statewide sort of model. So just to your point, we've definitely been in conversations with Eagle and Mesa and Junction and a few other places that we're trying just to do some preliminary fact finding. So thank you for mentioning that.
Commissioner Marin.
Yeah, thank you. And I just wanted to say that in Swatch County, there is Mountain Valley Lumber and other partners are looking at all the beetle kill out there to work into airline fuel. So that's another project that's going on in Swatch County. So I'm really in support of this idea.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. If we are moving on, we've got transportation and telecommunications, Arapahoe County, permissive authority to collect roadway maintenance fee. Do we have a commissioner or representative available?
Hello.
Thank you. Floor is yours.
All right. Hi, everyone. So this actually strikes on the same themes that we've been talking about today, namely that we as counties have no money. So this would be permissive, granting us the authority to do something, not requiring us. It would give us an ability to do something that municipalities already are able to do. And this would be a fee. So basically you use the roads, you pay the fee. It would be based on, yes, on property and an estimation of road usage per type of property. You guys can see it's a little detailed. We've got some ideas. And at the outset, proponents are going to be, largely us. Opponents, potentially business community, maybe affordable housing advocates. I took note and felt the punch when Pitkin shared earlier that the governor would veto any kind of proposed fee that could potentially increase the cost of living or cost of housing. This could be argued to have that impact. However, what I will say is that in Arapahoe, we have been talking with our residents about our budget shortfall and surveying them about potential solutions. The first survey I saw, and when we really started kicking off this effort, was mid to late 2022. We have conducted over, I think, 5+ surveys across 23 and 24. And since late 22, it has been held consistent that our residents are willing to pay more for roads and road maintenance. So I think we could characterize this quite strongly that while it has a assessment and evaluative process related to property, that really this is a fee about roadway usage going strictly to roadway maintenance. So all that to say that, yes, this would have some political hurdles. It is in the same vein of the things that we're all talking about here today. Obviously, is it a fee? Is it a tax? And we already have some, different fees and taxes related to roadways. But this is something that municipalities are able to do. We would like to be able to entertain the idea of being able to do it. And I've already also flagged to Commissioner Pogue's kind of invitation and I think Kelly's kind of, we should strike up this interim committee, already flagged that for Director Weimer, that this might be folded into that conversation. Although I think that interim committee is about more property taxes, but this is related to the whole thing that we've all been talking about today. I can go into kind of some more of the detail. It's in the description, but can also pause for questions. This is basically just a fee. You use the roads, you help pay for the roads, maintenance, more or less. Questions?
Okay, I don't hear or see any questions, except now I do. Commissioner Pogue.
Sorry, a little slow. Commissioner Campbell, I appreciate this idea, and I think it fits really nicely with the revenue diversification conversation. So would love to see this one in that conversation as well.
We can do
We
that.
plan to participate.
Wonderful. Any other questions? Commissioner Church.
Yeah, just for clarification, this would be a one-time fee. Could the revenues from this fee be used? I mean, it's a annual fee versus a road impact fee, which is a one-time charge. Could this revenue be used any place in the county, or is it specifically or geographically limited? Wondering what your thoughts are.
What do you mean, could this fee be used anywhere in the county? I mean, what do you mean?
There has to be, in road impact fees, there has to be some sort of nexus with where it's collected, where the construction is taking place, and where you use the money.
Gotcha.
It's
Yeah.
pretty loose, but is this general?
Yeah, for those capital, and that's normally, to help with development and all that. So it's like it's related specifically to that area. I got you. I would imagine there is, we didn't talk about that explicitly when this idea came forward from our Public Works and Development Department. I would imagine that in the sort of stakeholdering process as a county is contemplating implementing such a fee, that residents would also have that very same question. And I would imagine or foresee, you know, some sort of, we would need to estimate the fee that we would need to levy to help pay for those maintenance costs. And so I'm sure there would be some sort of equation, some sort of map that's drawn of saying, you know, if you put in this much money, like we're estimating that we're going to collect this many fees from this area, you know, and that there would be some sort of, not tying it too strictly to a formula, but some sort of expectation given on where these funds would be allocated. But that would be for, I think, each county to determine, because each county would also be able to determine what amount of fees on which type of property type they would want to issue this fee on. So I think that would be flexible up to the counties. Yeah. And that's something that we would be willing to discuss if there's, you know, but I think the idea is to give us this flexibility and then allow local jurisdictions with our knowledge of what is happening in our counties to figure out the best way to distribute those fees that are collected, the maintenance related to those fees. Commissioner Weaver.
Just to give you a scenario here in Yuma County, and I think these are all on state highways. Would that fee go towards those also?
I think it would be for county roads.
Oh, county roads only. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Commissioner Church, your hand went back up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that from a county standpoint, I'd like the flexibility to use it anywhere in the county. Because yeah, I think the flexibility is an important part of this. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm having an idea. Please tell me if it's terrible. But I'm wondering, as we think about Commissioner Weaver's proposal and we think about this proposal, it does make me wonder if it is worth asking for perhaps a study where CDOT contracts with a third party and really evaluates and does all of this. We know that HICPUF has done similar types of studies where they bring a third party in to do some evaluation. And I'm wondering if anyone thinks that we could find some value in that.
I am. If it would, so what's interesting is, so if as part of the process that we talked about in Arapahoe County, when we entertained, what would this look like if this legislation got passed and we were given the ability to do this? Arapahoe County, we conduct fee studies before we do any kind of fee anyway, or even raise our fees and all of that, right? And so that, while I think you're talking about something broader, you know, if we could just get the ability, we can do an impact, we can, not an impact fee because it's different, but a maintenance fee. We would be doing studies for that. I think you're talking about maybe something of like what would be the most helpful legislation to address our collective problems here, sort of more of an assessment of what is the best solution, as opposed to studying what counties would do if we had this. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, Kelly and I were going back and forth about this, but just it seems like there's a need for money for roads. I think I'm smart enough to pick up on that much. So do we just need to kind of reassess all of the different fees and taxes that go into HUTF and see if it's sufficient, or, you know, which ones haven't been updated in 20 years? Those of you who follow human services on the county administration side, you know, HICPUF contracted with a third-party vendor to do an assessment of the funding that we receive for county admin, and then a year later had to come back with kind of a revised funding model for all of that. So this is obviously a little bit different, but is that a potential model where we're kind of conducting an assessment to realize the need and then figuring out what it would take to get to that level of need?
I'm completely against studies. I think they're horrible. I think we spend too much money on them. But what you're saying makes sense. And we've all got a problem with our county roads. And Huft has got a major issue with itself. I'm on the SIMTech committee. I just got appointed to that. And they're talking about taking, and I haven't been there long enough to know what this means, but they're taking their $2 contribution per whatever that is, and they're wanting to raise it to $4 per. And all that money comes straight out of HUTF. HUTF is going to get hammered this year. And so we could even include the emergency services in that. Also, we have seen a history, I've seen a history of legislators do not like making decisions unless there's that concrete proof. They're not willing to listen to us, each individual counties, and can give them our concerns. So maybe in this case, I have to bow down and say, yeah, maybe this makes sense.
I kind of wonder if strategically it makes sense for us to be raising that conversation about a study, because also I got very sweaty, stressed when I was reminded of when Commissioner Pogue mentioned what Mark Ferrandino said about what the state would do if they pulled, if Initiative 50 passed and just yanked our HUTF funding. So maybe this is a way to start that conversation. Well, I would still like to entertain this idea specifically within the broader mix of everything we're doing. Maybe that is a broader conversation that we need to have that says, like, look, man, like, not only is this money that y'all are already giving us not enough, but then you're going to think about yanking it and pulling it into the general fund. If Prop 50 passes, like, what do we do? And we're going to need mechanisms to increase fees and collect money to continue to maintain our roads, as that is one of our primary functions as a county. And so maybe this is a way to elevate that conversation, is that study. I wonder if that will be quick enough for their kind of reaction and response to if 50 does pass. That would be my only concern, is they're talking about making moves and we're talking about studies. I think at that point we would have to be able to pivot and say, a study or don't do that, but yeah, those are my thoughts.
Thank you. And I would just add, I like to be an and person as much as possible instead of an or person. So I do think that there's enough things that we've talked about kind of in this space that makes it seem like this might be an and issue. And so Commissioner Campbell, just to be very clear, I was not suggesting that we supplement your proposal with that instead, just merely that maybe this is an and. Thank you.
Roger that. And I think that's, yep.
All right. Yes. Any other questions, comments on this one? All right. So moving along, we've got still within transportation and telecommunications, a proposal from Los Animas County to create additional transportation planning region. Do I have a commissioner or a representative from Los Animas available?
Yes, good morning. This is Luis Lopez, and thank you all for being here today with us. This one's actually very simple. However, it does come with somewhat of a little bit lengthy background. So if you please bear with me. Within the last year or so, we had a bill put out, 1101, giving authority to CDOT to evaluate the transportation region boundaries. And during that opportunity, they come up with a study for possibly moving, relocating, changing, and or otherwise. And at the end of that discovery, they've come up with possibly of introducing and offering, which they have to the Transportation Commission, of merging South Central TPR with Southeastern TPR, opening up an opportunity for a voice in the Intermountain region, and especially, I believe, for the Summit County, which we are in support of having voices all across the state, especially in particular when you don't have that. The Intermountain region was opposed to this as well, but they did offer some other alternatives if this was to occur. And recently we've had an opportunity to testify with the Transportation Commission, and at the last meeting we were able to be there as well. I do have along with me today County Administrator Phil Dorenkamp, who will speak when I conclude, and also County Commissioner Wendy Andrade possibly will be speaking as well to some of these issues. The multiple counties have opposed this moving any of the boundaries. And so at our TPR we had here in Los Animas and Huerfano County, Commissioner Terry Hart of the Transportation Commission, the Vice Chair, was at the meeting, and we had a conversation at that open dialogue regarding a possible alternative. And the alternative would be to do exactly what this bill is to add a voice instead of having any separation or losing any voice for any particular region. At that time, Commissioner Terry Hart thought it was a great idea, and he bounced that around with the TC, and he reached back out to me asking me to move forward with this idea and this thought process. At that time, we engaged with Southeastern Council of Governments in Prowers County, Otero County, Baca County, Bent, all of the southern region, Huerfano County, Los Animas County, and we do have the support of Pueblo County Commissioner, I believe, as well, and also University of Colorado as well for this possible process. We do also have the support of Representative Winter at this time and Senator Pelton, along with two other Democratic representatives and a senator, I believe, as well. So we have done our due diligence on this. We've had plenty of stakeholder meetings. We have moved forward with the next step. This was the first step for us, for you, CCI, to get support in making this a priority bill. This would be, in our opinion, a win, adding to the initial legislation or changing initial legislation that designed and set up the TPRs so we could have an additional voice at STAC. Now, remember, STAC is just an advisory committee. However, it is very important that we all have a voice, and we really want to make sure to include that for our friends up north in Summit County, that their voice is heard too for their concerns. I'm not understanding what the issue is with the Intermountain region, but when you have that many counties and that many projects, I can understand their plight and their need to move forward. So again, this will help and assist. Instead of having any losers, we'll have nothing but winners in moving forward, and there will be no detriment to any county of the 64 of us. So I think this would be a win-win situation for us, and we appreciate your support. And with that, I will open this up for Mr. Dorenkamp for any follow-up comments.
I'll just summarize what Commissioner Lopez said, and that is that CDOT has in front of the Transportation Commission a recommendation to merge the South Central and the Southeast TPRs to free up a TPR then that they would end up using to split the Intermountain. What that's going to do as a consequence is allow our area, or impose on our area, the loss of a voice in STAC. And as Commissioner also alluded to, we think the solution is a legislative amendment, I believe, to Statute 43-1-1102 to increase the number of TPRs from 15 to 16. This allows CDOT to accomplish part of what their recommendation is, and that's having a TPR to split the Intermountain. But then it also keeps the South Central and the Southeast TPRs whole, including not, frankly, robbing us of one of our members on STAC. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can jump in there too. And just so you guys know how the TPRs work, the reason why we're asking for the voice to stay is because what they will do is add if this goes through, they'll add a voice for the mountain region, which I know that Summit County is struggling to have their voice heard. But also at the TPR, they decide and vote where the need is gonna go. So it's not taking away any of the additional funding, and I know that a lot are struggling with the funding. This just make sure that we add a Summit County voice. We do not lose one from the southeast in the rural areas, as well as making sure that all of the rural areas have some voices on that TPR. And, you know, times change, traffic patterns change, and we're seeing it throughout the state. And we want everybody to have, make sure that they have a voice, and we can all work together on this. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Commissioner Pogue.
Thanks all. Just to clarify a few things on behalf of Summit County, this is not an idea that we support. And it is not just Summit County that is impacted by the challenges with the IMTPR. It's also Lake County. There were 2 votes at the IMTPR as to whether or not there should be 2 TPRs. One was in favor and one was against. And so I also just wanted to share that with you folks. As I've shared with Commissioner Lopez, the other Commissioner Lopez, this doesn't feel like the right place for this conversation. You know, CCI is not in the business of supporting or propagating bills that really do pit parts of the state against one another. And so I would hope that we don't, accept this as a CCI initiated legislation. I also don't think that this is the solution to a very legitimate problem that you all, I've never liked or appreciated in this conversation that is about Summit County getting a TPR so that South Central and Southeast lose one. That's not what we should be advocating for. But I think the problem with just creating another TPR is it really dilutes everybody's funding. And so I anticipate a dialogue where our MPOs are vehemently opposed to this approach, and it becomes a rural versus urban problem, which I don't think CCI should want to engage in either. So my commitment is to continue to explore solutions to the problem. I very much appreciate people recognizing that Summit County deserves a voice and deserves to have our projects funded as well. But I don't think this is the answer or the right approach. And I hope we can all take more time to explore what might work better for everybody.
Just to comment on you, Commissioner Pogue, thank you for your comments. You know, the MPOs, I don't think we'll see a discrepancy here because they're not losing a voice. The voice will be lost, will be South Central Council of Governments and Southeastern Council of Governments. And here's a win situation for you guys. We do also know it is politically motivated too. A lot of the funding comes out of for the Democratic Party out of Summit County for this, and this how that bill was initiated 1101 over a year ago. So we see that too, and we really want to make sure that we have the support of all the counties. And by the way, at the Transportation Commission hearings or meetings we had, we did show multiple letters of opposition throughout counties, through up and down the corridor and out in the regions of multiple counties who oppose this merger, but do support moving forward with adding the voice for our community. There also is underserved regions of the demographic that we have for the southeastern and southern South Central, you know, with the population base as well. And my financial perspective of it, we want to make sure that those in the poverty area of demographic do not lose out their voice as well. So, you know, we have to really delicately make sure that the funding is available to continue and also have that voice for your community as well. So, Mr. Dorkamp, I see your hand is up.
You're on mute, sir.
Thank you. To touch upon the dilution of funding, if we go from 15 to 16, I guess there is some question about that, at least from the lobbyists that we've spoken to. But if we stay at 15, merge South Central and Southeast, imagine what that's going to do for our funding. It'll theoretically, if I'm to believe on everybody's getting a certain amount of the pie, it's going to cause two current TPRs to split one piece of that pie, whereas right now we both have a piece of that pie. So that's why we think that going from 15 to 16 is the most palatable way to address this issue. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, let's move on. We've got a proposal here from Yuma and Elbert County to redistribute the HUTF funding tiers. Commissioner Weaver, please.
Thank you. Once again, going after HUTF. I've been doing a little bit of research, and I'm sure most of you know that we have 3 tiers, how we are funded by HUTF. There's tier 1, which are $69 million. And then there's tier 2, $17 million. And then tier 3, $86 million as of the last recorded here. The one that I've been struggling with, and this is going to be a little controversial, and maybe this is something that maybe CCI does not want to take on, but I wanted to at least bring it to everybody to see what the temperature was, is tier 2. Tier 2 has 17 counties where they distribute $17 million. They do not distribute that money equally to all those counties. When I first looked at this, there's really no rhyme or reason as to why the counties were picked, but I did some research in 1989, House Bill 89-1272 laid this out. In further discussion with CDOT, I have not been able to talk to one person at CDOT that understands why tier 2 is distributed the way it is. And so my ask is that we remove tier 2 and redistribute it through tier 3 or the first tier. And that basically now we just have 2 tiers. It's going to affect 17 counties, but we're going to get a little bit more money to all the rest of the counties as we need it. Pretty simple, but controversial.
Just a teeny bit, perhaps. Commissioner Campbell.
Yeah, so I'll just say, that would impact our share and proportion of the HUTF funds. And as stated in the same, also on team, we don't have any money. That would be very hard for us to get behind. And I think maybe why Kelly and Katie were talking about, let's fold in this whole HUTF conversation into a broader situation. But, we feel for you, but it's, would be really tough for us to get behind a reduction in our portion of those HUTF funds.
Understood.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments?
Commissioner
Richardson.
Go ahead, Chris. Chris.
Am I on now?
You
That
are
seems to
now.
be working okay. There's two buttons to hit today. Yeah, and recognize this would lead to some winners, some losers. I do agree it needs to be looked at, though. It's kind of disturbing to spend months asking questions and nobody can explain where tier 2 came from, and it's likely far enough back where we had different growth in different areas they were trying to address. I do think rolling it into a bigger look would probably be appropriate, but if we can't explain why money is going somewhere, there is a problem. So I think just being able to determine, if we can't determine why, then it's certainly time to kind of take a fresh look overall. But that's all I got. But I thank Scott for bringing this forward.
And I think that's a great point to make, Chris, is when I talk to CDOT, and I'm not just talking to our Region 4 rep, I've gone all the way up as far as I can go, and none of the financial analysts, the policy analysts, the budget analysts within CDOT do not understand why Tier 2 is even there. We're going to be looking at it pretty closely. We're going to be talking to CDOT quite a bit as to why it's there. You know, if I can be given a great understanding and understand that, but you know, we've got some very large counties in this. And at first I thought, well, it's a population thing, but we've got Lincoln County that's not very far from us that's in here. So to be really frank and honest, one of the persons that I did ask about this is that they just had really strong reps in those counties.
Well, I guess if that's the way it's always been, was the answer for everything, we wouldn't need to do any legislation.
You bet. So I think this really needs to get a strong look at, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Moving along, we've got a proposal from Logan County, the responsibility for railroad maintenance projects. Do we have a commissioner or representative from Logan County?
I am here. Good morning.
Good morning.
As the last item on the agenda, I will be brief. To be honest, we're still gathering information here, but I wanted to get it on our radar at CCI. I don't know how other counties have had to deal with this. What has happened is when local railroads such as BNSF comes through and says, we want to upgrade this crossing for whatever reason, you don't have anything to say about it, but here's your portion of the bill. And for us, most recently, the portion of the bill is just shy of $150,000. Now, to you larger counties, it's probably not a big deal, $150,000 for a crossing. For us, that's a pretty huge impact for road and bridge. So I'm trying to understand better how this works. I understand it's through a rule process, that formula was put in place on who pays for what. I have reached out to the PUC, have not got back yet. I just wanted to put this on your radar, as I think this is important. And then I would also be interested in other counties that have had this issue. How have they dealt with those funding issues when the railroad comes in and says, here's your portion of the bill?
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Commissioner Geithner.
So this isn't really in about responsibility, so to speak. But I know recently I was made aware of some specific federal grant dollars related to improving those types of crossings. So I don't know if you guys have looked at that or aware of that as a, potential solution, but maybe that's an idea, which again, doesn't necessarily deal with whose responsibility and why they get to hand you a bill, but just an idea.
I appreciate that, Carrie. Thank you. I will pursue that as well.
Commissioner Buxton Andrade.
Just a quick question. Since it's a railroad crossing, is this all Davis-Bacon wages and that increases the cost of it too? Or can you pull it out of their hands to decrease costs?
The truth is, we haven't even looked. If we do some of the work ourselves, it reduces, such as flaggers. They pay outrageous amounts for flaggers when they close this, like $3,000 a flagger for 3 days work. It's unbelievable what it's costing the county, and I'm trying to get a handle on it. The deadline was coming up, so I hurried in trying to get this in as I still gather information.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jerry.
Commissioner Church.
Yeah, in La Plata County, we have been charged by the railroad for crossing upgrades in the past. It's very infrequent, But it does occur, but I think this one is worth talking about and exploring in more depth. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lopez.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for bringing this to our attention, Commissioner Sonsberg. As a Front Range Passenger Rail board member, I think this issue might come up sooner than later for all of the corridor identified for Front Range Rail moving down the road in the next couple of years. So this might be something to really chime in on and start to focus on to see how that negotiation or how that expenditure is going to be placed upon counties with now being integrated on some of that rail up and down the I-25 corridor for the Front Range Passenger Rail issues. I know a lot of those plans will be put in place in negotiations between the Front Range Rail Passenger and the freight rail organizations, and also with the FRA and whoever the operator may end up being on this. So there's a lot of good questions to be asked, but this is a great time to bring this subject up. Thank you.
Commissioner Macy's.
Well, Commissioner Lopez really said it quite well for those of us who are advocating for additional passenger rail, and I'm representing the Mountain Rail Coalition up here in Routt County that is Route Grand Moffett. We may run into the exact same problem, so I won't parrot exactly what was just said, but I think that this is a very timely topic, and I'm certain we would support it.
Thank you. Commissioner Campbell.
We have a couple railroads out east, Byers and Strasburg. We haven't had to deal with this problem of just being allocated dollars, but I think, I think we feel it might be worth exploring, and we support the exploration here, even if we haven't had to deal with it yet. And $150,000 is a lot for us too. So empathetic there.
Thank you. Commissioner Church.
Yes, would like to have this apply both to interstate rail lines and to scenic local interstate lines. So we have scenic railroads that don't cross any state boundaries, and they're extremely profitable. And it seems like, I think that should be included. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments? All right. Believe it or not, that wraps up our proposal portion. Well done. I'm glad we blocked all day long, and we didn't need to do that. So just to reiterate sort of our next steps, we will be going around to district meetings, as you all know. I believe these are all on your calendar, I hope already, where we'll give you an additional opportunity to talk through some of these proposals. Maybe you took some notes and have answers to questions that were asked. If we didn't do it here, we certainly will. And then we will move forward with steering committee and then ultimately our full membership meeting. If you need anything from your CCI team, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I'm very happy to help, as is the rest of the team here. Appreciate all of the thought and work that you put into these proposals. And as mentioned, there are no bad ideas, and they're only going to get better with our collaborative work. So looking forward to our ongoing discussions. And with that, I will turn it over to Commissioner Weaver, you've got your hand up, so I will turn it to you.
Hey, real quick, Kelly, thank you. Has the locations of each one of these meetings, the district meetings, been verified, or are they public yet?
I think that we've got a few that we don't have the locations set yet, but we do have dates set. So we will be following up with your full location and agenda shortly.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Brown.
Yes, are there Zoom options for the district meetings?
These will vary. If the meeting room has the capacity and the capability, we will have that hybrid option. If it doesn't, sadly, we will not. We will work and provide as much information as we can for those of you who are not able to attend. So I hope that is helpful. I also see in the chat that we've got something from Commissioner Buxton Andrade that this was her last meeting. So thank you, Commissioner, for all of the work that you have done for CCI and for your community. It's been a pleasure to work with you as well, and looking forward to learning what's next. Congrats and best of wishes from the CCI team. Thank you again, everyone, for your time. I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Supez to close us out.
Very good. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, team. Just a reminder, our staff is absolutely incredible and we can't do it without them. So make sure you say thank you to these guys when you get a chance for all the work they do. Just one little thing on the slideshow. It actually showed September 23rd. It's actually September 20th is the Friday. So just a little thing in there. It's still the Friday, but it's actually the 20th, not the 23rd. So unless there's something else out there, we will adjourn this meeting and we will meet again on Friday, September 20th.
Katie just died a little inside, but I will fix her up. Thanks, everyone. Please have a wonderful afternoon and don't hesitate to reach out if there's anything we can do. Thank you.
Thank you. We're adjourned.